we were traveling this week and we were renting a car, and the people sitting at the car desk at the Hertz or where we budgeted, wherever we were, they looked. I felt for them. They looked bored. They did not look fulfilled in their job. They were lovely to us for sure. But it hit me that job's probably going to get automated sooner rather than later, given that they didn't look like they were using every second of their time, and all the incentives are going that way. And we haven't talked about automation in a while. So you just went to a conference on this. So tell us anything cool you saw, and then we'll dive in a little deeper.
The conference was fascinating. There were a few takeaways I had. The first is that AI is advancing and getting more powerful and practical. There was a company, for example, that was an AI education company where they monitor your eye movements and facial movements to see if you get bored during the lesson, and then if you are bored, they switch tacks or do something that reactivates you.
I should get one of those for our conversations on this podcast.
What are you saying, bro?
When you get bored with whoever
when I get boring, or vice versa. It's like, I don't need Zach, I need AI Zach.
I need AI Zach.
He'll be like, hey, I see your eyes.
Step out of it. Holy cow.
So AI
God, can you imagine that?
Yeah.
There's an art to sleeping when your teacher's not looking when you're in middle school, high school, right? Put your head down.
Yeah, apparently AI can see through that shit.
Jeez, that sucks.
And it's meant to help you engage more. And
theoretically,
teach you better,
right?
But it's getting better and stronger and more practical. So that's one takeaway. Another takeaway I had was that its job replacement capacity is growing, and that's hand in hand with some of the things you're describing in the labor market. So we're in the midst of a fairly nasty cycle, which is you look up and say, hey, you're short workers. Well, then let's automate the jobs that are there. And then you need fewer workers, and you have fewer workers. I mean, right now we're still down. Last I checked, about 4 million jobs since pre-COVID. And the labor force participation rate in the United States right now is maybe 61.9%. Something really low. If you look at the international comparables, I think we're tied with Ukraine or something along those lines. If you look at other industrialized countries that you think of as modern economies and peers, they're almost uniformly higher than us.
Are they doing something better than we are in this, or we just have?
They are. They are.
Are they avoiding automation? Like what? That's kind of where I was going. Like.
So what's happened here in the U.S. over the last number of years is you had our labor force get driven up and up by women showing up in the workforce. And then after that advance, then it's been going down, down, down for the last number of years and years and years. A lot of the people that are getting pushed out of the workforce are men, are non-college educated men. And by the way, that's driving a lot of political and social phenomena, ills. I mean, it's not positive in most any of these communities. And so then you have automation also that now is speeding up. You have people who are dropping out of the workforce right now for a variety of reasons. Some of it's health related, some of it is meaning of life related. I mean, this is a very, very tough time. And so a lot of people are taking a step back. And if you have the capacity to take a step back even for a month or two, particularly, by the way, if you have a job that you're pretty confident you can get an equivalent job at the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? Like if I'm in like
I can always go back to X.
Yeah, like let's say I'm a server at a restaurant or I'm a retail clerk. Am I pretty confident I can just show up to another store or restaurant and get a job like that?
Right now? Yes.
Yeah, of course. There are help wanted signs everywhere. So it's like, well, if I have the capacity to take 4 weeks off or 6 weeks off or do something, why don't I do that? Because I know I can just swap back into that job. Other countries have done a better job of trying to find fits between workers and employers. There are some countries that have very, very generous bridge and subsidy programs where they say, look, you're losing your job because, for example, of automation, and this does happen in some European countries, like what, we're automating your job away? We're going to be moving heaven and earth for a while to find you a new job. We're going to subsidize this. We're going to do that. We're going to pay for, and they actually execute.
Better than we do.
Yeah, better than we do. Like here, a politician goes to a mic and says, we're going to do this, and then just everyone forgets about it, and you go back and nothing happened. But some of these countries actually are taking workers and leading them by the hand to employers and being like, hey, let's try and make this thing work.
Interesting.
So there's some trends that are speeding up in the U.S., and AI is part of this. I talked to one company that has a labor replacing robot that costs approximately $55,000 and replaces one worker, working all the time. So
It never stops.
yeah, so if you do the math on that, like that robot's going to pay for itself within 1 year,
Yeah,
maybe less.
probably less because they're not working weekends and nights, right?
Yeah, and so I think that robot's going to sell a lot of units. And then when you look up and say, hey, where the jobs go? I mean, people are going to go like, well, no one wanted this job, so we got this robot,
Yep.
and here it is. So that was the second big takeaway I had. The third was I got reminded of some of the hazards around AI leapfrogging humanity and being unfettered in its impact and decision making. There was this Russian mathematician. You could tell he was fucking brilliant. It's one of those things. But
When they talk math in an accent, I usually just think you're smarter than you actually are. That's because I'm dumb.
This guy was also a professor in a major university and the rest of it. So he was talking about, there were some smart people at this conference, like really, really high end.
Yeah, so the types of conferences Andrew's getting invited to on AI are pretty, for what it's worth, they're pretty cool, man. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, you better be. Right? You're one of the bigger thought leaders on the topic. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and yeah, it's thank you for saying so. It's also the case that I turn down a lot of freaking.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You get a lot of them. So when you decide to go,
yeah, it's a good one because most of them I'm just like, hey, I can't.
And no offense if you've invited us to a conference. We get a lot. It's not personal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little personal, but okay, done.
So this mathematician said something that stuck with me, even though I kind of knew this stuff already. He was like, hey, if you have an AI that, let's say, is like a little smarter than a human, maybe it's genius level. Maybe you have like a human genius level AI, but then it can self-replicate itself like 1,000 or 1,000,000 times over. And so then you have 1,000,000 genius level intellects working on something simultaneously, and it can actually line itself up so that it's all able to conjoin. So you reflect on that for a moment, and you're like, oh my gosh, then you can really solve a lot of.
It was like above average intelligence.
Yeah, he's like it doesn't even need to be like you don't need like one like super genius level AI. If you have even like a fairly intelligent AI that you can then replicate 1,000 or 1,000,000 times over, and because of the way it's wired, it can actually have those units all working in tandem in concert, so that they're speeding each other up or speeding up the entire process. And then it really dawns on you for a moment. You're like, oh, wait a minute, this thing really is going to transform a lot of what we think of as work. So this particular mathematician, there were a number of things that a lot of smart people said at this conference, but they were like, hey, right now the natural state of affairs is going to lead the rewards to end up being held in the hands of a small number of firms or individuals. And the level of public safeguards are kind of lacking. And so we should be pursuing some kind of Manhattan Project government-led initiative to try and keep AI from doing negative things as it's getting stronger and more powerful. And I heard this from a number of people there, and they were all correct. And then I thought to myself, oh gosh, like where is our government on this? And our government is not exactly, at the vanguard of trying to figure out what's happening in these labs or in these firms. So that reminded me of some of the large-scale issues that we're facing. Another person spoke about how there are a couple dozen countries that already are investing in AI weapon systems that are going to naturally want to make decisions as quickly as possible, because you have to consult a human. It slows you down. So one of the proposals is for countries to come together and adopt a treaty that says, hey, a human has to decide when to use lethal force. It's not just that an autonomous system goes, whoop, you're in the wrong place, like you dead, that sort of thing. But he said that the natural impulse for countries is going to be for speed and efficiency, and not trying to have a human somewhere in that link.
Correct. Security guards, like guarding a border of some sort or a drone or something like that, where maybe it's got some humanity baked into its code, but it's going to shoot to kill when it sees a warm body or whatever it is, right? Is that kind of what we're talking about? And especially some of the countries that are bootstrapping that. They're just like, it kills anything that moves, right?
Yeah, and then you have asymmetrical non-country actors. So there's an international world order that right now is not exactly humming.
Right.
You know, you have different factions, and then you have non-state actors, and whatever protocol you come up with. So right now the countries can't even agree on how to use AI militarily. And then if you have non-state actors or even terrorist organizations getting a hold of some of these things, then of course there are going to be no rules. So you start reflecting on what this is going to mean over time. You're like, oh my gosh. So those were some of the things that I took away. And I will say that this conference was very, very positive. There were people that were trying to solve these problems. They were like, look, let's come together and get in front of this stuff. And so I don't want to be super pessimistic in part because, you know, like it was a conference around solutions, but a lot of very smart people were very concerned about the natural trends.
Yeah, and we have been for a while. You ever read, I used to read this blog, Wait But Why?
Yeah.
By Tim Urban. And he's done, his one on Elon Musk a while ago was really good. But he did another one on AI. And basically the school of thought, at least then, and I think it's still the case, is that, so there's like 3 forms of AI. Can do one task better than a human being. That's like when we play the computer in chess, or we play, you know, someone, GPS, I guess, giving you directions faster or something like that. One task though. Then it can do every task. It's as smart as a human being. And then we haven't gotten there yet. And the third one is it's smarter than a human being. And in his, the school of thought is that we're at stage 1 right now. We know it's not an if, but it's a when we'll get to stage 2 when the computer is as smart as human being. But we don't know when that is, but we do know that once we hit 2, we'll essentially immediately hit 3.
Because as soon as it has the capacity to improve itself, then it can improve itself
to be smarter than us. Yeah.
You know,
and then infinite. Yeah.
Yeah, exponentially so.
Yeah. And then the analogy he used in this blog post is that it'd be like we will be like a monkey looking at a skyscraper. Like we'll know it's a skyscraper, or we'll know like it's a big object. We'll know it's got shapes and forms and maybe people going in and out and we can see activities, but we won't fundamentally understand what that skyscraper is, which is terrifying, I think, in AI in general. I don't know. It's like a next stage of human evolution, or evolution, I guess. It's not human anymore.